Hi, welcome to PATUE Talk. I'm Sam Patterson, and we're here today with Eric Simons, who has all kinds of fame. He's here today as the founder of Claco. And why don't you start by talking a little bit about your story as others depict it and your story as you understand it.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. So the first one was this is how I got started on this. So I actually got started on this when I was in high school, which wasn't too long ago. Actually, it was just 2 years ago. And I actually got started because one of my teachers pulled me aside, and she saw I wasn't interested in her class, and she pulled me aside. I was expecting her to yell at me, but she ended up saying, how can I make you interested in my class? And it was really interesting because no teachers had really asked me that before. They just said, you need to turn in your homework, or we're going to call your parents, and the parents would call the teachers, and I'm sure you're very familiar. So anyway, it got me thinking, and I ended up looking at how she was teaching in the classroom, and it really came down to the resources that she was using weren't really relevant or engaging. Reading out of a textbook and doing worksheets just wasn't that fun. So I said, well, why don't we use some digital resources online, and it might make the class a bit more engaging. And so we did that, and what I ended up realizing is that teachers don't have a lot of time to invest in finding good digital resources on their own. And so Claco is very much a way for teachers to find great digital resources to use in their classroom by the help of other teachers. So if a teacher finds a really great resource, they can post it on claco.com, and another teacher can come and use that resource immediately in their classroom.
And when you were working with the, I want to ask you a little bit more about the process of,
Sure.
like coming to this realization. When you were working with the teacher, you said that you found that she just didn't have a lot of time to find digital resources. What was it you were doing? Were you like searching Google? How were you finding the resources that you were bringing to her?
Yeah, it was like searching Google, videos on YouTube were it was a great segue. I mean, I think for a lot of things, like DNA, that was one of the things that where it was very tangible when you had a interactive 3D model of DNA. And
was this a science class?
Yeah, it was a science class, and so it was very tangible to see that in action, versus seeing a printed page in a textbook with some text beside it. Being able to really touch it and interact with it was a really fundamentally changing experience for me.
And I assume that she was excited to have these resources.
Yeah. I mean, she loved it. She wasn't necessarily afraid of using technology. It was more of, I think this is with a lot of teachers. It's just it's hard to find the time to invest in learning something new, and especially when there isn't a proven. There isn't a standardized tool for doing something like this yet. So it's a risk I feel like for a lot of teachers.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a risk, and I think that innovation is really hard in the classroom because a lot of teachers don't feel like they have the time to fail. Yeah. They're going to try something, but it better work because you only have so many minutes in the classroom. So, how did you get from saying, oh, well, teachers need to be able to have more access to tools, to I'm going to build a new way for teachers to interact with resources and each other? I mean, that seems to be, a real differentiating step. So a lot of people may make it to the first step, but I don't know that a lot of people make it to that second step.
Yeah, I think, and for me, it was very much like a lot of great projects that started as a side project. I was doing software consulting at the time, and so I knew how to engineer applications, and so I said, well, why don't I create something that we can use in our classroom? And it was just a side project. And
so you were doing software consulting in high school?
Yeah, I was doing software consulting in high school, and so I was able to save up a decent bit of money. And so after I graduated high school, this started my junior year of high school. I started working on what was Class Connect and now Claco. And so after high school, I had a choice of either spending a lot of my money going to college, or I could take that money and invest it in something that I found very interesting and that I was very passionate about at the time, which was building really great tools for teachers to use that save them time and help them be more effective. And so to me, it was a no-brainer going and working on Class Connector, Claco.
Excellent. I've got my profile called up here so we have something to look at, but I'm wondering if you could kind of walk us through the parts of the website, and I'll be over here on the other side of this camera while we do that.
Absolutely.
And I can kind of direct the...
Yeah, so this is what you see when you log in, and so Sam is subscribed to a few of the teachers on the site, and you can see there's a feed here of the activity that's going on with the teachers that he's following, and you can watch the resources that these other teachers are posting. And so if you see something you like, you can click into it. And what's really cool here is that if you like a resource, you go and look through this thing. There's this button here that says Snap to Binder, and so without even having to download, without having to upload anything, you can just put it directly into your repository of resources. And this is amazing because it allows teachers to share really great curriculum and use really great curriculum with a very low cost to waiting for things to download, just making it very seamless to make that process happen. But what's very cool is like if we click on Cami Goucher, we can actually see really a very cool portfolio of this teacher's work. And all the things that she's posted on here, and where she's from, and how many people subscribe to her, it's very cool to be able to
Can you talk a little bit about subscribers and subscriptions, and what kind of models you're pulling in, and why that's an important part of what you've got going on here?
Yeah. So we went with a subscriber subscription model. For those who are on Twitter, it's very much like following people. And the reason we went with this was. Teachers are becoming they're the new age publisher. They create creating really great resources aided with tools to create awesome content. And so what we're trying to do is give teachers just an audience for other teachers to follow their work and even follow the work of other teachers. And so the way we've done it is through subscriptions. You can subscribe to as many teachers as you'd like. And whether they're teaching the same grade or if they're teaching something you're just interested in, and so that's very cool.
Now, you said giving teachers an audience, and there have been a couple times, like earlier on when you were talking about your own personal experience, you said this one teacher actually said, "How can I make you more engaged?" Whereas other teachers had just said, "Why aren't you turning in your homework?"
Yeah.
Why is audience important, and what role does this audience of teachers play in what you see as kind of where education is going?
Yeah, I think Steve Jobs had a great quote where he was talking about why Apple, what made Apple very successful, and so he said something along the lines of, we let the best ideas rise to the top of the company. And that's a very it's the strategy that allows really great ideas to be surfaced and to be used on very large scales. And so why it's very important here is every teacher has a very unique perspective on how to teach something in the classroom, and the best resources, the best way to teach something should be shared, and it should be something that every teacher has access to. And I think that's the general trend, is instead of everyone having to create a lot of these resources from scratch and figure out how to teach everything from scratch, we're going to a model where really great resources directed for certain types of students is possible. If the way you teach a kid about voting demographics in an inner city school versus the one you teach in an affluent school is very different, and so allowing teachers to share these permutations of how to teach something is really important in that respect.
Now, this is a site that is in beta. You guys are still building it and testing it. What have you learned from your users so far, and where do you see this going to?
Yeah.
And kind of how, I'm pretty active on here, but I don't really have a sense. I know there's a lot more people on it than when I began,
Yeah.
but I don't really have a sense of how many users you're at right now. I see a lot of activity.
Yeah.
But could you talk a little?
Yeah. You asked what the future of the site looks like and what we've learned from users.
Right.
I think the biggest thing we learned from our users, I think what the biggest thing we learned is we keep hearing from our users that they want to find not necessarily content. A lot of teachers can come here, and most teachers are actually, they don't say we want to find content from other teachers. It's the first thing they say is we want to find other teachers like me. And that was kind of an interesting realization that not every teacher has access to a teacher that's teaching the same thing. And so for me, as an entrepreneur, as an engineer, I can't imagine doing my job, particularly well without being able to talk to other people about best practices or talk to them if they have questions and things like that. So that was a very interesting realization, and I think how that's going into the future. We're going to be making it really easy for other teachers to find teachers like them all around the country, to be able to share resources, to collaborate and ask questions, so that it's not just limited to sharing content, it's going to be sharing all types of knowledge.
Say a little more about sharing all types of knowledge. What is it you're... Fill that out for me. I'm not sure what you...
Yeah, so content is one type of basically how did you teach this in your classroom?
Right, and the content's very visible, right?
Yep.
Like I've got this binder of digital citizenship content right here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is great, and this is very useful for a lot of teachers. But for example, one of the things we keep hearing from teachers is it'd be great if there's a place where we could go and ask questions from other science teachers. It'd be great if we could go and video chat with other classrooms or with other teachers, and things of that nature where it's not just the resources, it's also how do I do this? So this happened. What's the best way to do this? So essentially, very much the way, if you're familiar with Quora, like how Quora views knowledge, is asking questions and receiving a response. That seems like a very our users think it's very important that they can be able to have that sort of interaction with other teachers.
I find that one of the things I enjoy most about the network I have on Twitter is the fact that there's a bunch of people now, and I know their different areas of expertise, and I can send them a question, and they get back to me. Yeah. And it's just people that a few months ago I didn't know from anybody, but through interacting and chatting, we've develop that and they'll actually respond. So, the idea of having something like that where people are, focused communities answering questions or something that is important, because it allows us to kind of filter our expertise. Because I'm sure you've noticed that teachers really like listening to other teachers.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
With the video chatting with other classrooms, I've seen that a lot in the Flat Classroom project.
Yes.
Could you share a little bit about what you've learned as far as how teachers are using that and how that is changing how they're thinking about their classrooms?
Yeah, I think specifically with the Flat Classroom project, it's kind of interesting because when I was in school, video chatting with another. I remember I had a pen pal. And I had a pen pal in Australia, and until you're actually talking to somebody face to face, it's very intangible. He explained how the Australian school systems worked and what his life was like and what was popular over there. But really, just being able to talk to somebody face to face, and then hear what they have to say to it, and immediately kind of interact and be able to ask questions, really drills home the point of a global classroom, being able to see what other cultures are like, and that's I think is very interesting. Maybe not even other classrooms, but other professions. Being able to Skype with authors or actors or whatever it may be.
I have been enjoying listening to teachers, especially some of a lot of 5th and 6th grade teachers seem to be doing the different mystery Skype callers or mystery Skype day, where they'll actually line up a bunch of different people that'll Skype into their classroom through the day, and the kids will have to ask questions about, how does this, what's it like there, and they have to figure out where this person is based on their ability to, essentially play 20 questions with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's
it's very cool. It's very cool.
Other questions? So, I know that I've talked to Scott a little bit about this. How essentially we're in this place of transitioning as a world. Like as the cloud gets more and more developed, the file cabinets become less and less relevant, and the access becomes potentially much greater. Have you met with any teachers who aren't necessarily open to this idea of storing their work someplace and tagging it and having everyone have access to it? What kind of pushback does an idea like this get? I mean, I love it,
Yeah.
and I'm, perhaps in some people's eyes, overexcited. But I imagine that isn't the universal reception you get. What kind of pushback do you get?
I think a lot of teachers, I think there's with content sites, usually you have a 97 to 99% of consumers. You have 1 to 3% of creators, and that's pretty accurate with what we're seeing. So a lot of teachers really like using other people's stuff, but they don't like putting their own stuff online. That's what the data is showing us, and that's okay, because we want people that are proud of their work, and they're kind of they understand why sharing resources is a really great idea, and so it's the pushback. A lot of teachers will come here and they'll only use the site for finding other stuff, which is fine. And then we have teachers that come here and the primary reason they use it is just to store their stuff and share it with other people. So it's an ecosystem, like many things.
And what is, and then I'll open it up, we've got a couple teachers here in the room, if they have questions they can ask, but one of the questions I want to know is, what is Claco's relationship to the content on the site? Like, some sites own the content on their site.
Yeah.
What's Claco's relationship to this content that's being essentially crowdsourced tagged to the site?
Yeah, it's our relationship is very much, we just host it. It's a lot of the stuff is licensed underneath Creative Commons. And you can add in the descriptions for the content. You can add whatever license you'd like. Otherwise, it's very much in the way that Google and like a Dropbox would handle content. They're essentially providing a service for you to let your content be there. But in order to do that, we do have to have permission from you, which is in the terms of service, to be able to host your content. If you make it public, you're granting us permission to let other people, copy it and use it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a certain license, then that has to be upheld by the party that uses your content. So it is entirely in your hands if how you want the content to be licensed.
And I've noticed that there's some sites that seem to have a bit of a firewall, like when I put it into the binder, it'll say this can't be viewed on a third-party site or something like that, and just instructs you to click through to it, but you're still able to associate whatever tags you have with that site. You just can't necessarily view the site inside of Claco.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the room, are there any other questions about Claco or Eric's experience?
I have one actually.
Yeah.
So, at the moment that you finished making a user on Claco, what do you see as sort of like the first and most important steps?
That is a very good question.
That's a very good question.
Fantastic question. So the most important steps for us, and we're actually changing them because we found through data that we made a few wrong bets, but essentially the big things for us are we found that if you find 3 or more teachers that teach the same thing that you do, the retention goes from 10% to 80%. So getting you connected to at least 3 other people that have content on their profiles that are like you dramatically increases the retention of a teacher or a person coming to our site. So we push you to subscribe to people. We push you to, so number 1 is subscribing, number 2 is filling out your profile information, and number 3 is actually learning how to use the curation tool we have here for storing your resources. And it's very much, those are the 3 things, and we're working on emphasizing the profile completion part, because a lot of teachers are coming here and they subscribe to people